Hilchos Tumas Meis Perek Chi, the laws of corpse impurity, chapter 9. Continuing on yesterday's theme of discovered graves, what do you do if you discover a whole group of graves and now you're worried maybe you've uncovered a cemetery? How do you know if it's a Jewish cemetery, if it's a non-Jewish cemetery? What do you have to do if it is a cemetery? What do you do if it's not a cemetery? A whole bunch of laws around that. And at the end also we're going to deal with other types of doubts with relation to a corpse. You have a bunch of piles and the corpse is in one of them. How do you go about determining which one it is, as we're going to see at the end of the chapter? Says the Rambam halacha aleph, Misha haya chofer besada. A person is digging in a field, randomly digging in a field, umatza meisim rabim beguma achas, and he finds a whole bunch of dead people in one hole, and they're buried not in a Jewish way. Zeh al gav zeh, one is on top of the other, zeh bitzad zeh, or one right next to each other. Oisha matza harugim, or he found what appears to be murdered corpses. And here the commentaries say, even if they're not in one hole. Beguma achas was the first case. When you find what appears to be murdered corpses, they don't have to be in one hole. Oisha matza meis yoshev, or you found a dead body buried sitting. Oireshe bein birkover, with his head between its knees. In all of these cases, you don't have to worry that maybe this reveals that the place around here was a Jewish cemetery. That's not how Jews buried their dead. Neither of these positions, nor in groups. Ella, rather, what do? Noitel hameis shematza. You do have to get rid of the corpse. You take the corpse that you found. V'noitel kol ha'afar hatichuach shetachtav. Plus, you have to take all the soft earth that's under the corpse. V'choifer bivsulas hakarka shalosh etzbos. And you have to dig into the virgin soil, to the bedrock, 3 more finger breadths. Umoitzi hakol. Take all of that dirt out. And the rest of the field remains presumed to be pure, as it was before you found this grave. What's the significance of this earth and the 3 finger breadths? This dirt, together with the 3 additional finger breadths, is called the tvusa. Tvusa literally means soaking or wallowing of the dead body. Basically, it's the amount of soil which the sages estimated would absorb some of the fluids and liquids of this dead body, and therefore you got to take it all out so that you get the entire thing. The word tvusa comes from what we say in the Haggadah, from Yecheskel, misboiseses b'damayich. I saw you soaking in your blood. Like we had also the term earlier, dam tvusa, soaking blood. So tvusas hameis, this is a reference to the earth that's dug up with a corpse that's found in your field. Halacha beis, not always do you have to take this whole tvusas hameis in accompaniment with the corpse. Sada shenergu bo harugim. If you have a field where a bunch of people were murdered, there's corpses scattered all around, melakit kolo atzames sheba, you simply gather all the leftover bones, v'harehi tahira, and the field is pure. Same thing if you are removing a grave from your field. And obviously we're talking about not a case where you knew that it was a clear grave that you can't move, as we learned yesterday. This is the commentary say, it was talking about a case where you buried somebody in your backyard for now. It was for a time being. You knew you're going to take him away later. When you take him away, all you have to do is pick all the bones and it's pure. Why is there no law of tvusas hameis over here? As the commentaries explain, the special law of tvusas hameis was enacted A, only for people that are buried, not for corpses that are scattered. B, buried permanently, not buried for the moment, for the time being. Also, if there's a pit, everybody knows you put there your miscarried fetuses or murdered people. Same reasoning, you just pick all the bones out, bone by bone, and the rest is pure. Halacha gimel haya chofer, if a person was digging umatza meis mushkav kederech shekovrin amesim, and instead of coming across one of those weird configurations of dead bodies, he comes across what seems to be a Jewish burial, a dead body on its own, lying in the same way that we would bury dead people. Noitlei ve'es tvusasei. So if it's only one, pick it up along with its soaking earth, and you're good. V'cheini matza shnayim. So too, if you found 2, noitel kol echad mehen tvusasei ima, you pick up the corpse, the bones, the skeleton, you pick up the soaked earth around it. V'chal asada toira, everything else in the field is pure. Matzah shleisha mesim. Once you find 3 in a row, kol echad mehen mutal kaderech hanikbarin. Each one is placed like those are usually buried in the Jewish custom. Im yesh bein zeh lazeh me'arba ames v'ad shmeina. If between the first and the third, that's how we translate bein zeh lazeh, from one extreme to the other, from the beginning to the end of the 3 corpses, you have any distance between 4 amas to 8 amas, kimlei mita v'koivreha, which could accommodate the space that's taken up by a coffin and those that bury it, as we're going to explain in a moment. Now you have to worry, maybe this is indeed a cemetery which you've just uncovered, and you're going to have to check for another 20 cubits, about 30 feet in the field, check for graves from the end of where you found the last grave, which is the amount equivalent to 2 burial graves with the courtyard in between them. What does all this mean? So in times of old, they used to bury in catacombs, as we explained in the other chapter. There was a cave, which was typically 4 amas by 6 amas square, into which there were dug recesses. Each one was an amma wide. Typically, they would dig 8 recesses into this typical cave, leaving a space of an amma in between and a half a amma at the ends. And this is how you reached the equation of 6 amas by 4 amas. Now, the Rambam is saying that you have to assume the worst case scenario. Once you find 3 graves, so let's take a look at a picture from the Art Scroll Mishnayos. If you find them close together, there's going to be 4 amas in between them. If you find them at their maximum distance, let's say you find this one here, another one here, the maximum distance will be 8 amas, because you're going to have to account for the diagonal. Even though the length of this side would be 6 amas, but because of the diagonal, it's going to be 8 amas. But that's the maximum. You cannot find 3 in a catacomb separated by more than 8 amas. Therefore, if the 3 dead bodies have anywhere between 4 and 8 amas, now you have to assume that you've uncovered a cemetery. And you have to also further assume that you didn't just uncover one catacomb, maybe you uncovered a full cemetery the way they used to do it in this way. They used to have a courtyard which opened to 2 burial caves. Shtei Meis v'chatzer shabinein. There was 2 burial caves with a courtyard in between. So once you find the 3 dead bodies over here, even at the extremities, let's say it's this one, and this one. So you have 8 amas in between. You have to now dig 20 amas further this way. Maybe the graveyard or the burial area extended all the way down to there. There's some debate why the Rambam says min ha'achrain from the last one. It should also be min harisha, and the Ravid says he should go from both directions. But the Rambam says it in this way, and there's ways to resolve why he says what he says, but the point is you have to do a check of 20 amas. If you do the check, if you do the investigation, and the Rambam will soon say how you do it, the imlei matzah sham meis acher, if after checking you don't find any other dead body, harei oisana esrim shabadak tahiris. So the 20 amas which you checked are pure, afal pi shehin shchunas kvares, even though they are what seems to be the district, the neighborhood around the graves. Doesn't matter, even though they're close in proximity, we don't give it the halachic status of a graveyard. Matzah meis echad b'seif esrim amma, but once you find even one more grave, even at the end of the 20 amas, tzadich livdek mimenu esrim amma acheres, you must check again further 20 more amas. Because once there's a basis established, we can't just let you off the hook without further investigation. But if one of the graves that you had discovered in the beginning or the end was not buried in a Jewish way, he was found murdered, or sitting, or lying in some other unusual way, not in the normal custom, where let's say his head was between his thighs, you don't have to check the 20 amas, just take them with their tvusa, with the earth around them, because the assumption is that they are idol worshippers, Gentiles, not Jewish graves. And the point is, as we learned, and the Rambam's going to say it right now, the non-Jewish graves don't have all the impurities associated with graves, and therefore you don't have to worry about it. As long as you pick it up and you take the earth around it, you're good. Idol worshipping Gentiles in general, don't have the law of impurity of graves, since anyways their corpses do not transmit impurity through a tent. Touching the grave makes you still pure. Until you either touch or carry the tuma directly. If a dead body was missing a limb, such a limb that had it been taken from a live person, he would die. He doesn't have the law of taking the earth around him, nor the law that he becomes part of a district of graves. The same thing with corpses that are found just open on the open field. So they also don't have the laws of district of graves or the earth around them. You simply gather them bone by bone, and everything is pure. If somebody was buried in a place without permission of the owner, yesh lo tvusa ve'ein lo shchunas kvaris. When he's exhumed, you must take out the earth, but no district of graves, because he's buried without permission. He doesn't become part of the regular normal burial routine. Halacha vav echad hamotzei shleisha meisim kedarkan batchila. Doesn't matter whether you've actually found 3 actual corpses in the beginning. Oisha matzah shleisha kuchin, or you found just 3 recesses that seem to be in tandem or in a pattern. Oikuch unikia umayra, or even 3 different types. A recess that goes in from the side, a hole that goes in from the top, a cave that kind of opens. Harezu shchunas kvaris. The fact that you found 3 makes it into a district of graves, requires you to do the test. Matzah shnayim ve'echad hayayadua. If you found 2 new ones next to one that you had already known about, yesh lahem tvusa, they must be picked up with the earth around them. Ve'ein lahem shchunas kvaris, but they don't have the law of district of graves. Shahakever hayadua ein la'esa shchuna. You already knew about the first one. It cannot contribute to becoming part of a district of newly discovered graves. All the sages said was that if you find 3 new graves, then you have to check it. How do you go about this check? How do you do the test? First of all, you have to dig all the way down to bedrock or to virgin soil. Psula means land or soil that you can tell it was never worked. And you got to go all the way down. If you go down even 100 amas and you find a pottery shard, obviously someone put it there. Start again, because that means you didn't reach the bottom. You got to keep going until you reach virgin soil. Reaching water is like reaching virgin soil. Halacha zayin, when you do the check of the 20 amas and you're going so deep, you don't have to go all the way down. You don't have to dig 1 furrow into the ground the full length of the 20 amas. You dig a space of 1 amma by 1 amma, and you go all the way down. Umaniach amma, then you skip an amma. Dig another amma by an amma. Umaniach amma, leave another amma. So to till the end. Because there's no less than an amma between each grave. You saw in this diagram over here. The grave was an amma wide, and there was an amma of space, but no more, and also no less. Therefore, if you're digging down at each amma, you're certainly going to come across a grave if there is one. Halacha ches, if you were checking the 20 amma length, and during the 20 you reached a stop, a river, a puddle, a public pathway, you stop, no need to check further. The district is clearly over because there's no more continuation. Halacha tests. When all these tests are being done and all this earth is being removed, the person who actually removed the dirt, the checking dirt, is pure. Unless he actually finds impurity where he digs. Before he finds anything, he can literally eat truma. It's totally pure. Whereas, if somebody is checking a pile of stones for a potential death in an avalanche, even when he approaches to check, he cannot eat truma. The case is, he knows for sure that there are dead people there under the pile. He doesn't know where they are. By the way, this implies that if you were in doubt, you're checking an avalanche, you don't even know if somebody died, you might be pure. And that's indeed how some people rule. What's called a cheskas chayim. Somebody might be alive in there, not dead. Nevertheless, in Pirush Mishnayos, the Rambam writes that even in a doubt, you're going to go on the side of caution and you're going to prohibit it. Halacha Yud, gal tameh shenis'arev b'shnei galin tohirin. You have 3 piles of stones. One is impure, 2 of them are pure. You got mixed up, you don't know which is which. Badak echad mehen umatzei tar. If you checked one of them and you found it to be pure, hu tar v'ashnayim tmeim. You can assume that it's pure. The other 2 are by default assumed impure. Badak shnayim v'nimtzu tahirim. Check a second one, and they're found to be pure. Hein tahirim v'hashlishi b'cheskas tameh. They are now pure, and the third one remains presumed to be impure. Badak shlashtan umatzei tar. If you checked all 3 and you found them to be pure, kulan b'cheskas tuma. So something's off. They're all now again presumed to be impure ad sheyivdek shlashtan, until you check all 3 again, and this time not a cursory check. You got to check them all very well. Until you reach bedrock or virgin soil, and you don't find any trace of any dead element, and then we'll assume that a weasel or something ate up whatever was there from the corpse, and everything's going to be pure. But initially, by the way, you only have to check cursory, and that's enough to make the first or second ones pure. It's only when you get to the third one, then you got to go back and check again very well if you find that they're all pure. Obviously, you're missing something. Halacha Yud Aleph, if you have a pit into which people used to cast their miscarried fetuses, which of course impart corpse impurity, if you form a tent over that pit, you automatically become biblically impure. Even though weasels and hyenas are around and they may have eaten the corpse, ein safek maitzi midei vadai. The doubt about this cannot take you away from the definite fact that there are miscarried fetuses down there, and you have to assume that you are impure. The Rambam famously writes that this is only true in Rishus HaYachid, in a private domain, in which case doubts are considered to be impure. But if you have a Rishus HaRabim, when you have an issue of doubt in the public domain, we always assume it to be pure. And in that case, the suffix is powerful enough. And if it's known that hyenas or weasels hang around over there, then actually, just by default making a tent over the hole, you don't become impure. Aval, however, im hi pila sham isha nefel. If a woman had miscarried something in there, but you don't know if she miscarried something which transmits impurity or not. In other words, there are certain entities that if you miscarry them, they have either disfigurations or whatever it is, they don't become considered like a full fetus. So here, since the hyenas and the weasels are around, the doubt is powerful enough, even in a private domain. The Rambam explains it's safek karev levadai. Here it's very, very near to the possibility that they did what they did and ate up whatever is there. Plus you have the element of the fact that you don't even know if what she miscarried is even something impure to begin with. So in this case, the doubt is considered pure. Halacha Yud Beis, the Rambam concludes the chapter. Davar Yadua, it's well known. All of these tumas that we're discussing in these chapters that are all out of doubt, it's all rabbinic impositions. The only person who's scripturally impure is if you became definitely impure. But all the doubts, whether it's in matters of impurity, in matters of forbidden food, in matters of immoral relationships, matters of Shabbat, the only reason that you are strict in a case of doubt is rabbinic. Even though we have a rule that says, when in doubt about something biblical, be stringent, that rule itself is rabbinic, according to the Rambam. The Afal became, with one exception. Nevertheless, davar shechayavin al zdeinei kares, if it's a matter which you're going to be liable excision, then the doubt is forbidden biblically. How do I know? Because the Torah prescribes certain things to do in the case of doubt, to bring an asham tali. If Torah didn't believe that the doubt is to be stringent, then it wouldn't require you to bring an offering. The fact that there's an offering involved tells you to be stringent. As we explained in the laws of Isurei Bia, forbidden relationships, some texts have Hilchos Shgagos, in the laws of sacrifices for inadvertent transgressions in the last book, and in many other places. There's some question here because the Rambam seems to indicate that once you cross a line into excision, now Sveika D'Oraisa L'Chumra becomes Min HaTorah. But there are many cases, in the very cases that the Rambam himself mentioned, of immoral relationships or Shabbat, which do carry kares, and nevertheless the Rambam is saying that it's only rabbinic. Not getting into the ways to resolve that, but there are resolutions. I give it to you. Do the research. Come back to me on the comments on YouTube. Let me know what you come up with.